Hey guys, will this WRX exhaust fit my Forester? No, the WRX exhaust won't straight bolt into your Forester. They need about a 2-inch adapter to extend the length of the exhaust, which normally goes between the centerpiece and the diff back. But since you guys asked that question, let's talk about other exhausts and what they do and don't fit. So, one of the things we used to run into a lot is people would see a nice exhaust on one of our GC8s and want to put it onto their GD. But there were a few issues with this. The main issue was the O2 sensor location. On the GC8s, they tended to be up the top, right after the turbo in the dump pipe, whereas the GDs had them down below, underneath the car, near the cat. So that was one of the main issues, was making sure your O2 sensor location was in the correct place. Most aftermarket exhausts and dump pipes have two bungs, so you can either put it on a GC8 or a GD, as the mounting points are the same, the turbo's the same, and they dip down the same. So the next issue you would run into would be the steering knuckles. On the GC8s, they're thin, metal, and clear pretty much everything. But the GDs had an extra dampener in the knuckle, so it was big, chunky, and if you got a big aftermarket dump pipe, it would foul, unless you were lucky enough to have an STI where they had the thin knuckle still from the GC8, but slightly different splines. Long story, go into it another time. So this was the reason why some people would buy a second-hand exhaust and have big hammer marks up near the dump pipe. It was literally just to clear the knuckles, because not many manufacturers actually took that into consideration, and they designed it around the STIs, not just the WRXs. And then when we go further back along the car, all the exhaust hangers were the same. When we get to the diff back, it changed between the GC and GD model. They still both had 3 hangers. They still looked the same. 2 furthest rear hangers stayed the same, but the one that was closest to the subframe swapped sides. So it wasn't really needed. Not all aftermarket exhausts had all 3 hangers, but you could get away with not using it, so you could use the different model exhaust on your car. Another very common question about the exhaust was whether or not the WRX sedan and wagons had the same length. And the answer is yes, they were the exact same length. So you could take your sedan exhaust and put it onto your hatch or wagon. Sorry, I still get confused and it's a very hard thing to get out of. But you could take the exhaust and swap it between the two. But in the Liberties, though, this was different, as the wagons had a slightly longer tip. So the exhaust itself was the same, but as far as I'm aware, from the rear muffler to the very tip of the exhaust was slightly longer on the wagons. So if you put a standard sedan exhaust on it, it would actually tuck slightly underneath the rear bar. But with the Gen 4 Liberties, most of the aftermarket exhaust companies gave you adjustable rear muffler tips, so it would work between a sedan and a wagon. The most common size for exhaust for a Subaru you would see with aftermarket would be the 3-inch turbo back. But that wasn't always the best. Nathan showed me a site called msengineering.com.au where they go into depth about the differences with exhaust, what's good, what's bad. And one of the things they found was a way to increase your mid-range torque was to run a 2.5-inch diff back. So you would run the 3-inch all the way to the diff back and then drop down in size, which helped give better mid-range torque and help the exhaust flow a little bit better. Another thing they said on that website was the fact that they preferred split dumps. And when I refer to a split dump, I'm talking about something like this and this. They literally separate the air from the exhaust and the wastegate, so you're not causing a tumble effect and slowing down the air and causing a lot of back pressure. But on the website, I'll share down below, it explains a lot more in depth how beneficial it is having a split dump. Dump pipes came in many different shapes, sizes, and forms. So you had the bell mouth, the split bell mouth, the divorced, and the ones that are closer to stock, so a little, well, let's be honest, very restrictive, which you can kind of see why. The benefit of the divorced dumps was that it would separate the wastegate gases further down to the exhaust, so there was less likely to create turbulence in the exhaust and the dump pipe. Something I had to explain to customers a lot was the fact that you couldn't mix and match exhausts. They would come in expecting to be able to take a diff back off one exhaust and make it fit with another. But people need to remember that different brands and different manufacturers design their exhausts a certain way. You could get the dump pipe, but to make it match with another manufacturer's catback, you would most likely have to either extend the exhaust, shorten the exhaust, or at least change the angle of the flanges. Which, whilst we're talking on that topic, is why did Subaru do this with the Liberties? So I own a Gen 4 Liberty with a H6 motor, so 6-cylinder. It shares the same style catback as the 4-cylinders, but the issue is the flange is slightly rotating. So to the naked eye, when you have them both sitting next to each other, it looks like you can take a 4-cylinder exhaust and use it with your 6-cylinder. And when I'm saying 4-cylinder, I'm talking about the turbo models, so as they had a slightly larger exhaust. It's just frustrating as the aftermarket exhaust for my model car is very low, and I know how slight the angle difference is. So if I wanted an aftermarket exhaust for my car, I'd most likely have to get a Liberty GT exhaust and pay someone to cut up a brand new exhaust just to make it fit on my car. And I just don't see the point of it, and it's very annoying. And because of that, I want to end on a high note. So you know what? Let's listen to some of my old videos of my car bouncing on two-step and compare the differences between muffled with a Canon and no exhaust, because why not? Rightio guys, if you have enjoyed it, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you haven't. I do these videos every week and try to make them as entertaining as possible. Please know I'm still learning, so don't judge too harshly, please. And be sure, if you enjoy talking Subarus and learning just a little bit each week, make sure you join us on Thursday nights at 7:30 p.m. for our 3P Garage Live over on Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube, where we talk Subarus and help people out. If people have questions, we answer it live on stream. And yeah, thanks for joining me again, guys. See you later. Oh, geez, that was such an exhausting video to make, guys.